In a change of pace, due to the passing of Thomas Jefferson's wife Martha in 1782, the daughter of the president filled the role of First Lady. Martha Patsy Jefferson was born in 1772 to Thomas and Martha Jefferson. She was born at Jefferson's home, Monticello, in Virginia. The Jeffersons had a total of 6 children, but by 1804, Patsy would be the sole survivor of the group and the only one to pass the age of 25. The family lived a genteel life during Patsy's early years, and she was initially schooled at home, as was common during the time. At 7 years old, Thomas Jefferson was elected governor of Virginia, and the family lived in Williamsburg during that time. In 1780, the government was relocated to Richmond, and Jefferson relocated his family. When British troops advanced on Richmond in 1781, Jefferson had received advance warning and managed to escape with the family to their country home. When her mother died, Patsy was just 10 years old. Her father was extremely grief-stricken due to the loss, and Patsy perceived herself to be his sole companion during that time. She remembered witnessing several violent bursts of anger from her father as he tried to get through his grieving. Jefferson was not entirely supportive of educating girls, but did arrange for his daughter to receive a private education. In 1782 through 1784, she was boarding with another family and used this time to study French, dancing, drawing, and music. Jefferson was very strict about what Patsy should be taught and was particularly focused on cleanliness and spelling, which he thought were trademarks of a lady of high moral behavior and diction. In 1784, Thomas Jefferson was sent to France, and he brought Patsy with him for the trip. They would stay there until Patsy turned 17, while Jefferson served as the U.S. Minister to France. He enrolled his daughter at the Pentamont Abbey, which was a Catholic convent, but they assured Jefferson that Patsy would be excluded from all religious instruction as she was a Protestant. It was here that Patsy learned arithmetic, geography, world history, and Latin. She was also able to continue to study music and drawing here as well. By the end of her time there, Patsy would also be a master of 4 languages. Patsy flourished at the convent and found her peers to be the elite and model of female intelligence, capacity, and energy. Her experiences at the convent made her very witty and an intelligent woman, which would be a key asset in her future role as First Lady. In late 1784, another one of Patsy's sisters passed away, and her remaining sister Mary, also known as Polly, came to live at the convent with Patsy. In 1788, both Patsy and her sister contracted typhus and needed to live with their father until they recovered. They returned to the convent, but Jefferson withdrew them both once he learned that Patsy was considering converting to Catholicism. During the summer following her leaving the convent, Patsy immersed herself in the Paris social scene, including many balls and concerts. But this was a time of political upheaval in France, and the French Revolution was looming over the people. Jefferson sailed for home with his family in 1789. A year later, Patsy married a man named Thomas Mann Randolph, Jr., a planter at Monticello and supposedly a descendant of Pocahontas. As a wedding gift, Thomas gave his daughter 8 of his slaves from Monticello. The couple first lived at Randolph's estate, Verena, in Henrico County. In total, they had 13 children together, 11 of them surviving into adulthood, which was a stark contrast to Patsy's experience growing up. The 1790s was a busy time for Patsy as she managed both her husband and her father's estate during that time. Although her husband was a good man and the son of one of Jefferson's closest friends, Patsy did get linked to several of the Randolph family scandals, including suggestions of illegitimate children of Richard Randolph being killed, and also her father-in-law marrying a teenager during this time. Patsy was actually called as a witness in the case of the Commonwealth versus Richard Randolph. Thomas Jefferson wanted Patsy and her husband to move closer to Monticello, so in 1800 he sold them the land for the Edge Hill plantation they would eventually occupy. Patsy remained busy, still managing both plantations and educating her children at home. When Thomas Jefferson was elected president, Patsy served as his hostess and informal first lady, as Thomas Jefferson was still a widower. In this role, she managed her father's social schedule and welcomed guests at formal receptions. Patsy was well known in Washington for her intelligence and role in the social ladder. Her husband also served as one of the House Representatives in Washington, D.C. from 1803 to 1807. Her wit, management of properties, and social graces caught the attention of Washington society. It should be noted that during this time, Patsy's younger sister Mary also helped as a hostess occasionally until she died in 1804. While Jefferson was president, Patsy gave birth to one of her children at the president's house, later known as the White House. It was Patsy's presence at the White House which helped soothe some of the scandals that occurred due to the rumors about Thomas Jefferson's involvement with one of his slaves named Sally Hemings. After Jefferson retired, Patsy and her children lived in Monticello with him. Patsy's husband was serving as governor of Virginia during this time, and living at Monticello helped save the family money. Her husband would visit Monticello occasionally. Concerned about the family's finances and loss of income if her husband served in the military during the War of 1812, Patsy convinced President James Monroe to give him a more lucrative temporary tax collectorship post. With 3 of her children, Patsy edited the first collection of Jefferson's writings for publication. She worked at spreading untrue claims that denied Thomas Jefferson's paternity of the Hemings children and that would put her father in the best light. Patsy devoted much of her life to her father's declining years. She had separated from her husband, who was said to suffer from alcoholism and mental instability. Jefferson described her as the cherished companion of his youth and the nurse of his old age. Shortly before his death, he said that the last pang of life was parting with her. Patsy dealt with the strain of financial concerns over the debts of her husband, her father-in-law, and Thomas Jefferson upon their deaths. They became indebted due to declining land values, risky investments, failed crops, and needy relatives. In 1826, her son Thomas purchased the Edge Hill estate. Thomas Jefferson died on July 4, 1826. She inherited Monticello and her father's will, as well as his many debts. Her eldest son, Thomas Randolph, acted as executor of the estate. Except for 5 slaves freed in her father's will and giving her time, which was an informal emancipation, to Sally Hemings, they sold the remainder of the 130 slaves at Monticello to try to settle her father's debts. After his death, Patsy lived with Thomas, her eldest son, at Tufton. She stayed at the home of her daughter Ellen and son-in-law Joseph Coolidge in Boston from October 1826 to May 1828. She had her 2 youngest children with her at that time. She then went with her husband in June 1828 and was at his bedside when he died on the 20th of that month. By this point, she was living on the edge of poverty. Wanting to ensure successful careers for her family, which included her son-in-laws, she looked to Margaret Bayard Smith, who helped family members procure positions that led to successful careers in Washington. After her husband's death, she lived with her son at Edge Hill Estate until November 29th, and then in Washington, D.C. and Boston with other married children. To generate income, she hired out her remaining slaves. She also had a modest income from bank stock declared in tribute of Jefferson by the states of Louisiana and South Carolina. The state legislatures each donated $10,000 to support her. She had little income from her father's estates. Patsy put Monticello on the market after her father's death. She attempted to sell it through lottery, but was unable to sell it until 1831. After having been on the market for 5 years, the plantation sold for $7,000, 1/10 of its value. A school was established at Edge Hill by her unmarried daughters Mary and Cornelia, and Patsy taught music there at times. She also traveled to the homes of her married children in the later years. While in Boston, she wrote her final will in January 1836 and returned to Edge Hill in July. Patsy died there in October 1836. The last surviving child of Thomas and Martha Jefferson, she was buried at the Monticello family graveyard. Thank you for joining me in episode 3 of our series. Please look out soon for our next edition that covers the life and times of Dolly Madison.